you're really focused on, there's these issues in the outer world that you're seeing that you don't necessarily resonate with, that you feel called, that's a call for you to, do something about that. How did that tie into your knowledge around natural law and wanting to maybe change these things and these systemic things in the world that we're seeing that we might feel powerless over, that, oh, like I can't change the whole economic system. Like I'm just one person. You get where I'm going in that sense of like, we might feel small in the face of these larger issues, but we're still seeing them. So what can we do about that?
Yeah. When I first had met natural law proper, let's call it, in this lifetime, I was relieved because then it gave me permission to already be myself and do what I was already doing. Before, it was cringe when you care because, like you're passionate. And when you're passionate in a world, especially when you're younger and you're passionate, and so everybody's still very locked into their third dimensional self-concept, it looks weird. You feel weird because you feel like you're bearing your soul and you feel like you're too intense. And so it gave me permission to just be intense because that's not really something that I could change about myself. And so I went like, oh, see, look, you have to be a spiritual activist because so it just was a giant permission slip that I was at least, I was right on track for my life. And so how I see this playing out inside the larger world is where we follow our own passion, whatever those actions are. Because let me tell you one thing, it's easier for me to come here and say to people, yeah, you have to take right action. But we don't really know what right action is. And what we take the action for in one stage of our life, we might look back 5, 10, 20 years later and say, oh my God, like I lent more of my action to evil. So because of that, we take the actions that we feel we're most aligned with while knowing that we'll expand and we'll look back and say, that was the best I was doing at that time. And now this is what I feel is the best actions. And that doesn't mean that we were ever, that what I said about evil was a joke. That doesn't mean that we ever didn't need to take an action, because how do we know unless we do something? We can't deprive ourselves of those lessons. So we do the best we can. We might feel called right now to take actions in a certain way, whatever that is for somebody. But we have to stay open to maybe that there's a larger calling and then an even more aligned action. And so to go back to how I was talking about rites of passage earlier and how you had mentioned that about like, what are the rites of passage? One of them is that you will be replaced in whatever role you are taking. So do not feel the pressure to not expand and evolve into your next role, because it is law that someone will come to fill that spot. And when we deprive where we feel called to serve next, that helps nobody, not even the one who will receive that spot that they get magnetized and called into. And so because of that, if we just allow ourselves to know while we're taking actions that we stay open to maybe moving into what we now see are better actions, ones that serve all at a better way, whatever better means for somebody. And that's ego deaths, right? Those necessarily aren't fun, but I mean, I think it's fun now, right? Because you do it so many times that you just go like, you just tuck and roll. You just fall off the horse gracefully. You go on the sword gracefully. If you go with the energies, it's not as hard as then like, oh, it needs to be a dark night of the soul. You just go like, oh, I'm expanding again. And so what that has led me into personally is going, okay, maybe spiritual activism isn't going to get through the way that I want to maybe, like larger, calcified forces, let's call them. So I'm learning in my own way how to really transmute and to alchemize things at my level of consciousness that I'm at now.
It's also a huge permission slip, because if you feel like you've just been going through the motions at something that you're perhaps already very good at because you've been doing it for so long, to expand that and knowing like the universe will never leave like something that was meant to happen like just blank and no one else will do it. Like the fact that you mentioned how someone will replace you, obviously never in the same coloring and texture that we do it with, but it's a permission slip to say yes to that higher evolution. So super powerful that you just mentioned there. You brought up the calcified forces. I also did want to speak on and touch on the subtle manipulations and those unseen forces that you call the predictive programming that is around us, because part of natural law is the free will, and that you can't take another person's free will. So when we see, things that we don't like going on in the world, and we say, but how did that person agree to that? Maybe they did it through these covert strategies that were used to get to them in different ways. And you highlight those very clearly. I love to just give a space to sort of express how we can still say yes by not deliberately saying yes to something that maybe isn't in our highest alignment.
Yeah. So before this age, we weren't very emotionally intelligent. And that's nothing that I'm just saying it as it is. There's nothing, we're babies, we're growing. So we had mastered other things, but not emotional intelligence. And so imagine forces that know a person's emotional body and their energy field more than they know them. You can work their hemispheres. You could work their sense of reality and manipulate their perceptions, even easy, dare I say, if a person doesn't start off knowing anything about themselves. And so what we're really learning in this age, which I love, is like the nervous system. And we're learning about like, these types of energy centers, even combined with, these types of the higher mind or hormone production. We're learning all about ourselves now at a bodily level, from our organs, our glands, our nervous system, our brain. And so we're understanding the limbic warfare that goes on with like, okay, they can get me caught in a trauma mind control loop if they're showing me that, or if they're manipulating me in this way, or through repetition. Repetition is a strong way. You repeat something through enough sources, and that repetition will shape the motherboard of your nervous system and your subconscious, so that you are, without even your own awareness, contributing your free will into these creations, these mass timelines that are being created. And so because of that, we're really understanding the way that we respond to things or react to things, the way that things are being presented to us. I saw the funniest thing the other day. I don't know why it came up on my feed, but maybe it was to share this story. I saw this like 10-minute clip of how the person who had ran McDonald's, the founder, was not the original founder, but he like tricked the original founders out of it. And he was like doing this one interview, and he said like the funniest things. And I was like, that would never pass in this age. He was like, well, people like McDonald's because it digests greatly. So it's healthy for them. And so people like healthy food. Like he was just saying something very like, in this age, no one would believe you. And this is the progress we're making. People can't just pull one over on the collective now. And so because of that, we're emotionally more mature. We know ourselves more. We still have a lot to go, to bring in that more higher dimensional consciousness, but we're on track. And so all of that has to do with the fact that we are becoming spiritually sovereign, meaning that we know that on the most subtle layers that we are consenting or non-consenting to things, and we are now giving our power and our sovereignty to the things that we want to create, and understanding that even when we're against something, it's good to be aware of that, but to also know that we can't create from that same energetic playing field. So we're just learning spiritual sovereignty by all of these different ways that the predictive programming has been broadcasting literally their spells. We have caught up to that now, I would say.
In what ways has your discernment helped you avoid a negative timeline that you could have taken?
Actually, yeah. It's trusting my clairsentience at this point, because I'm claircognizant, but my sentience at this point will really get louder. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to just trust my sentience now as a point of stronger discernment than how I'm usually used to. My discernment usually comes invisibly. And I'm always still learning discernment as well. But I would say that that discernment is something that I do pay attention to, and I do cultivate. And so because of that, I'm used to discernment being my main way of operating, or at least knowing how to, where those gaps are to help fill them in and become better at discernment. And so what I have noticed is that discernment will start communicating to us on different levels, depending, like the more we evolve, the more discernment even expresses itself in its field. So how it's helped me is when there's just certain people, places, or things that now my physical, visceral sentience is coming online to either say, this is beneficial or this is non-beneficial. And then I'm just kind of surrendering into that, because that's a form of discernment that I'm not really used to operating in.